So let me go ahead and remind you of what I brought attention to this past summer and also why it's important to evaluate it right now. First, let me say whether there is a formal chartering of a national bank in the United States is a matter that needs to be put in the context of A, understanding that there are other nations that devoted a certain percentage of their GDP to, among other things, a global development bank that has been ongoing for nearly, if not over, a decade. And that a few years ago it was announced that they had already committed a certain amount of funds and they were going to sit on them for a period of time while they made determinations about what to do with that development money. If you put a certain percentage of your GDP into a intention to have a global development bank with other countries, and you agree you're going to sit on it for a few years, either to use it as collateral on loans for others, or to accrue interest, or while you look at various dynamics in order to assess your own economy and then make decisions about what you consider to be appropriate investment priorities later on. And during that time frame, as it comes time for you to move forward on your expectation of investment, all of a sudden there's a global health outbreak. Then there is potentially room to scrutinize very significantly the causation of this outbreak to determine if it may have been involved in any acts of economic or other sabotage in order to undermine other necessary development goals. Secondly, in March of 2016, I formally contacted the House Financial Services Committee as well as the Senate Banking Committee with a request for an investigation into inappropriate activities of a former Secretary of State and others, specifically regarding their relationship with a major American banking institution that had been availed of money during the bailout and had also been previously involved in congressional hearings concerning money laundering. My concern is that what was happening is this American bank was allowing for a form of illicit, or shall we say, banking centralization in other countries that may not have been tolerated in the United States, but based upon diplomatic relations with the United States, including under the auspices of a need for military assistance or kickbacks in the form of humanitarian assistance in response to a refugee problem, that they were aiding and abetting a situation of unlawful debt in the United States. So the formal national bank charter of the early days means one thing, but an intentionally orchestrated process of illegally and unconstitutionally forced privatizing federal and public goods under bad faith arrangements that have been accomplished in lieu of prosecution for public corruption is different on a certain level, but not altogether independent of a consideration of what were the constitutional qualms with the original Bank of the United States and its charter. So let me go through what was said by the Secretary of the State, Thomas Jefferson, on February 15th through 23rd, 1791. I'm just going to read excerpts. Opinion of Thomas Jefferson. The bill for establishing a national bank undertakes, among other things, 1. To form the subscribers into a corporation. 2. To enable them in their corporate capacities to receive grants of land, and so far as against the law of mortmain. 3. To make alien subscribers capable of holding lands, and so far as against the laws of alienage. 4. To transmit these lands on the death of a proprietor to a certain line of successors, and so far changes the course of descents. 5. To put the lands out of the reach of forfeiture or escheat, and so far as against the laws of forfeiture and escheat. 6. To transmit personal chattels to successors in a certain line, and so far as against the law of distribution. 7. to give them the sole and exclusive right of banking under the national authority and so far as against the laws of monopoly. 8. To communicate to them a power to make laws paramount to the laws of the states, for they must be construed to protect the institution from the control of the state legislatures, and so probably they will be construed. I consider the foundation of the Constitution as laid on this ground, that all powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states or to the people. 12th Amendment. To take a single step beyond the boundaries thus specifically drawn around the powers of Congress is to take possession of a boundless field of power no longer susceptible to any definition. The incorporation of a bank and other powers assumed by this bill have not, in my opinion, been delegated to the United States by the Constitution. 1. They are not among the powers specifically enumerated, for these are 1. A power to lay taxes for the purpose of paying the debts of the United States. This is excerpted 2. To borrow money. 3. To regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the states and with the Indian tribes. 2. Nor are they within either of the general phrases which are the two following. 1. To lay taxes to provide for the general welfare of the United States. 2. The second general phrase is to make all laws necessary and proper for carrying into execution the enumerated powers. Now, I'm going to read one more thing. I'm going to read the next two paragraphs. These are very important. It has been much urged that a bank will give great facility or convenience in the collection of taxes. Suppose this were true, yet the Constitution allows only the means which are necessary, not those which are merely convenient for effecting the enumerated powers. If such a latitude of construction be allowed to this phrase as to give any non-enumerated power, it will go to everyone, for there is no one which ingenuity may not torture into a convenience in some way or other to some one of so long a list of enumerated powers. It would swallow up all the delegated powers and reduce the whole to one phrase, as before observed. Therefore, it was that the Constitution restrained them to the necessary means, that is to say, to those means without which the grant of the power would be nugatory. But let us examine this convenience and see what it is. The report on the subject states the only general convenience to be the preventing the transportation and retransportation of money between the states and the Treasury. For I pass over the increase of circulating medium, ascribed to it as a merit, and which, according to my ideas of paper money, is clearly a demerit. Every state will have to pay a sum of tax money into the Treasury, and the Treasury will have to pay in every state a part of the interest on the public debt and salaries to the officers of government resident in that state. In most of the states, there will still be a surplus of tax money to come up to the seat of government for the officers residing there. The payment of interest and salary in each state may be made by Treasury orders on the state collector. This will take up the greater part of the money he has collected for his state and consequently prevent the great mass of it from being drawn out of the state. If there be a balance of commerce in favor of that state against the one in which the government resides, the surplus of taxes will be remitted by the bills of exchange drawn for that commercial balance. And so it must be if there was a bank. But if there be no balance of commerce, either direct or circuitous, all the banks in the world could not bring up the surplus of taxes, but in the form of money. Treasury orders, then, and bills of exchange may prevent the displacement of the main mass of the money collected without the aid of any bank. And were these to fail, it cannot be prevented, but even with that aim. The situation here is a context of convenience. Thomas Jefferson thought convenience was most distasteful. February 15th, 1791, Thomas Jefferson.